Welcome back to the deep dive. This is where we really get into the weeds, take a whole bunch of your sources, research, sometimes ancient texts, sometimes modern studies, and pull out the absolute key insights for you. And today, we're tackling something I think everyone, absolutely everyone grapples with. It often leaves you feeling, well, kind of silly, maybe regretful, definitely not your best self. Okay, picture this. Alarm goes off, maybe you hit snooze a few too many times, you're rushing, already late, grab your coffee, turn around, it's whoosh, total spill down the front of that clean shirt you just put on. Or maybe it's not the coffee. Maybe it's the end of a long week. You're heading somewhere important, and then, bam, complete standstill on the freeway. Just gridlock. And right then, this red mist just takes over. It's not just annoyance, is it? It's this huge wave of rage. Hot, feels totally overwhelming. And it doesn't just stain your shirt or make you later. It kind of poisons the whole day, right? It sticks with you. That stress, the regret, you feel like you were hijacked, some switch flipped, and you just weren't in control anymore. That feeling of being completely overtaken by an emotion that, looking back, seems way out of proportion.
It really is universal, isn't it? That feeling of being consumed, almost like you said, hijacked or possessed by it. And anger is tricky because in the moment it feels powerful. There's this burst of energy, this intensity that can almost feel seductive, like strength. But the aftermath, the actual impact, it's destructive, no question. It ruins our peace, it clouds our thinking, leaves damage behind.
Absolutely. And that's precisely what we're digging into today. This isn't just about, managing anger. It's about really understanding it, mastering it.
Yeah.
The great Stoic philosopher Seneca, he had this chilling phrase for it. He called anger brief insanity or temporary madness. Just think about that phrase for a second. Temporary madness, it's so vivid, really sets the stage for how irrational, how destructive the Stoics saw this emotion. It's not just being upset, it's a break from reason.
It really is.
So our mission today is a deep dive into that Stoic perspective. Where does anger actually come from, according to them? Why is it so damaging? And crucially, Seneca's really practical step-by-step advice on how to prevent it, how to handle it when it does flare up. Think of this as maybe a shortcut to getting a handle on an emotion Seneca believed cost humanity more than any plague. We're going to unpack why it's maybe not what you think it is, why the Stoics argued it's never useful, and importantly, how you can tame that red mist.
Exactly. And to really get the Stoic approach, we have to start with our absolute core idea about anger. It fundamentally changes how you see it. See, the Stoics didn't see anger as this uncontrollable force of nature that just washes over you, like an instinct you can't fight. No, they believed fundamentally that anger is a cognitive choice.
A choice.
Yes, it doesn't just happen to you. It arises from a faulty judgment, a specific kind of value judgment you apply to something that happens outside of you.
Okay, hold on. So the spilled coffee, the traffic jam, that's not what makes me angry. It's my judgment about the coffee spill.
Yeah.
That feels really counterintuitive. My gut tells me the traffic made me mad.
Right, that's the common experience. But this is foundational Stoic thought, straight from Epictetus. He said, "What troubles people is not things, but their judgments about things." Let's use a heavier example than coffee. Imagine two people get the exact same news. They're being sent to jail. It's the same external event. But one person might react with total despair, rage, feeling like a victim. The other, maybe someone practicing Stoicism, might see it differently. Perhaps as a test, a chance for reflection, maybe just an obstacle to navigate calmly.
Okay.
The event being sent to jail, that's the external fact. It just is. But the judgment, I am miserable because I'm in jail, or this is a terrible injustice that ruins everything, that's the layer we add. That's the value we assign to something the Stoics would call
Indifferent.
indifferent. Being sent to jail feels pretty far from indifferent. I know it sounds stark, but this is crucial to their system. For the Stoics, events themselves, things outside our direct control, don't have inherent moral value. They aren't inherently good or evil.
So if jail isn't inherently evil and spilled coffee isn't inherently bad, what is? What actually matters morally in Stoicism?
That's the key question. And the answer is central. There is no good but moral good, and no evil but moral evil. What that means is the only things that are truly good or bad are the state of your character, your virtue, your choices, your judgments, things that reside entirely within your own mind, your rational faculty, your moral will.
So my integrity is good, my cowardice is bad, my rational choices are good, my irrational reactions are bad, that sort of thing.
Exactly. Everything else, coffee spills, traffic, insults, losing money, even physical pain, even major misfortunes like going to jail are technically indifferent. They don't have inherent moral weight. They can't make you a good or bad person by themselves.
Wow.
So anger then doesn't come from the event itself. It comes from our judgment. that this indifferent external thing has somehow seriously harmed us. And often, the accompanying judgment that getting angry, maybe even seeking revenge, is the right and necessary response. We're basically making a mistake, assigning huge negative value to things that are, in the grand scheme of our character, neutral.
That actually makes a strange kind of sense. We get angry because we believe we've been wronged by something external, rather than seeing the only real harm is in our own poor response, our own lapse in reason. And that snaps right back to Seneca's phrase, brief insanity. It's not just poetry. It's highlighting how completely irrational anger is, how self-damaging it is. The sources really hammer this home, the enormous damage anger causes, not just personal, but societal. Killing, poisoning, lawsuits, wrecking cities, destroying nations, let alone individuals. And they make the point that, look, the world is full of things that could make you angry. If you don't get a handle on it, you'll just be perpetually angry, which is, as they put it, just a waste of precious time.
It's a really stark assessment of the human condition, isn't it? But the flip side is incredibly empowering. If anger is born from our judgment, from a faulty value judgment, well, then it's within our power to control it. The challenge isn't fighting some uncontrollable beast. The challenge is recognizing we have a choice and then retraining our minds to make different, more rational judgments about things that happen.
So the power to respond, the interpretation that lies with us, not with the event. We get to decide how we internalize things. That does feel more empowering than just being a victim of my own temper.
Absolutely. It's about agency.
Okay, so let's dig deeper into Seneca's specific thoughts in his essay on anger. He didn't just call it brief insanity. He really painted a picture of it. He called it anti-joy, which I find fascinating. It's the direct opposite of the Stoic goal, right? Which is eudaimonia, that deep sense of flourishing, tranquility, true well-being. Anger actively eats away at that. It's like a corrosive presence inside you.
Exactly. It actively diminishes well-being. And Seneca really focused on the damage it does to the angry person. He says it can destroy us individually. It's not just about shouting at someone else, it's about the internal state. He implies it leaves you in this disfiguring and debilitating state, mentally, and you could argue even physically over time, through chronic stress and poor decisions.
And that idea of being perpetually angry, if you don't learn control, it paints a picture of constant internal warfare, just exhausting.
A relentless internal assault. He was very aware of how much anger harms the person feeling it, often more than the target. But he also took on a belief that's still really common today. Most people think anger sometimes can be useful, like it motivates you to fight injustice, or it gives you energy in a tough situation, maybe even helps in war or competition.
Yeah, absolutely. The idea of righteous indignation, that feeling that your anger is justified and necessary to fuel action against something wrong, or even just getting fired up to perform better, Seneca argued against that.
He argued strongly against it. His position was radical. Anger is never useful, period.
Never. Not even when faced with genuine injustice. That feels hard to swallow.
It is hard to swallow because it goes against our instincts. But his reasoning is consistent with the core Stoic principles. First, anger is inherently irrational. Remember, brief insanity. How can an irrational state lead to rational, effective action? It can't, he argues. Second, he says anger always overshoots its mark. It's not a precision tool. It's clumsy. It goes beyond what's actually necessary or just. It causes collateral damage.
Okay, explain that overshoots its mark idea more.
Well, the sources give this great analogy about punishing an animal. If you punish your dog in anger because it chewed the furniture, your reaction is probably more about your own frustration, maybe about the past damage. It's vengeful. But proper correction, effective training, should be calm. It should be focused on changing future behavior, not just venting about the past. A calm no and redirecting the dog is far more effective than yelling in a rage. The same applies to human interactions, whether it's discipline, feedback, or seeking justice. Anger adds heat, but not clarity or effectiveness.
That makes a lot of sense. When I'm angry, I definitely say things I regret, things that don't help. I escalate things instead of solving them. It feels like you lose perspective. You might want to correct someone, but in anger, you just attack them, and suddenly you're the one in the wrong.
Precisely. It obstructs real justice because it's not objective. And it undermines effective leadership and rational discussion. Think about the example used in the sources, Socrates. He apparently kept his cool even when people were yelling at him, even when they sentenced him to death. Why? Because he was more interested in understanding, in the truth, than in just winning or reacting emotionally.
That's a high bar.
It is, but the principle holds. A wise person, a Stoic, wouldn't jump into every argument, wouldn't feel the need to fight every perceived slight. They'd recognize that angry arguing rarely convinces anyone and often just digs people deeper into their positions. They'd pause, resist the urge.
So the Stoic approach forces you to ask, is this anger really helping? Or is it just making me feel worse and probably making the situation worse too? It pushes you towards finding calmer, more rational ways to deal with things, even difficult things.
Exactly. It challenges us to find better tools than raw anger.
Which leads perfectly into the next part, prevention. It's not just about damage control once you're already seeing red. The Stoics were huge on preventing the fire from starting in the first place. That feels like the real goal, doesn't it? Not just managing outbursts, but cultivating a state where they rarely happen.
Absolutely. It's proactive, not just reactive. Seneca specifically advised strategies to minimize the amount of anger we experience. And the first step is fundamental. Know your triggers. This requires a pretty serious level of self-awareness, constant self-observation, self-critique. You have to monitor your own internal monologue, that inner discourse, and constantly correct the judgments you're making about events. It's like being an auditor for your own thoughts.
Right, noticing that little voice that starts spinning the story. This is outrageous. They did this to me. This is completely unfair. You have to catch that narrative before it takes hold. And Marcus Aurelius, the emperor philosopher, constantly came back to this idea of separating the causal from the material.
Can you unpack that distinction? It sounds really useful. It's incredibly useful. The material is just the raw fact of the event. Spilled coffee, traffic jam, someone's comment. The causal is your internal response, your judgment, the meaning you attach to it. By consciously separating these, you can strip away the emotional layer you usually add automatically. You can see the event in its nakedness, as Marcus might say. Just the facts without the immediate, this is terrible, or this is an insult judgment that fuels the anger.
So you acknowledge the event happened, but you pause before deciding it's a catastrophe or a personal attack.
Exactly. And this ties right into Epictetus's 3 core disciplines, the exercises Marcus Aurelius practiced constantly. They are fundamental for preventing anger: the discipline of assent, the discipline of impulse or action, and the discipline of desire. Mastering these helps create an inner environment where anger just doesn't find fertile ground.
Okay, let's break those down. They sound foundational. First, the discipline of assent. What does that mean in practice? If someone cuts me off in traffic, how does assent apply?
Okay, good example. Someone cuts you off. That's the external event, the material. Your mind immediately presents you with a representation, an initial impression. Maybe it's that idiot. He deliberately disrespected me. He put me in danger. He deserves whatever angry thought follows. The discipline of assent means you don't immediately agree with that representation. You pause. You examine it critically. You asked, is this really true? Did he deliberately target me? Is it a grave harm in the Stoic sense? Did it damage my character? Or is it just inconvenient, annoying, maybe careless driving from someone else, an external indifferent? Assent is about refusing to automatically endorse that first emotionally charged story your mind tells you. It's about not lying to yourself about the true nature of the event and your relation to it. You don't give your immediate yes to the anger-provoking interpretation.
So it's like putting a filter between the event and your belief about the event. Questioning that instant interpretation. Okay, that makes sense. It's about accuracy. What about the discipline of impulse or impulse to action?
This one's about your urges to act. When you feel that impulse to honk aggressively, to yell, to send that angry email, to retaliate, this discipline asks you to examine the impulse itself. Is this impulse rational? Does it serve a genuinely useful purpose, maybe the common good? Or is it just a blind reaction driven by that initial flash of anger or ego?
Right. Like in that meeting example you mentioned, the impulse is to lash out. But is that rational? Will it help the project? Will it improve the relationship? Probably not.
Exactly. The impulse might feel strong, but the discipline involves checking if it aligns with reason and virtue. A rational impulse, guided by this discipline, might be to take a deep breath, make a note to address the issue calmly later, or steer the conversation back to the topic constructively. It's about ensuring your actions stem from reason, not just reaction.
Okay, checking the source and the likely outcome of the impulse before acting on it. That's very practical. And the third one, the discipline of desire. How does that prevent anger?
This one is huge for anger prevention. It's about focusing your desires on what's actually within your control and letting go of desires for things that aren't. If you intensely desire things you can't control, like wanting other people to always be polite, wanting traffic to always flow smoothly, wanting your boss to praise you, you're setting yourself up for frustration and anger when reality inevitably doesn't match your desire. These are external outcomes.
Because they depend on other people or circumstances.
Right. But if you shift your desire inward, desiring to respond with patience even when someone is rude, desiring to use traffic time for reflection, desiring to do your best work regardless of praise, those things are within your control. When you focus your desire on your own actions and character, external events lose their power to disappoint you and therefore to anger you. You become indifferent to those externals in the sense that your inner peace doesn't depend on them turning out a certain way.
That's a profound shift. Wanting to be virtuous rather than wanting the world to be perfect, that definitely seems like a path away from constant anger.
It's about aligning your will with reality, focusing on your own sphere of control.
And like you said earlier, none of this is a quick fix. These aren't just mental tricks, they're disciplines.
Yeah.
They require ongoing daily practice. They become, as the Stoics said, marks of the good life, like building any skill or virtue.
Precisely. It's a continuous effort of self-monitoring, self-correction, and intentional practice. It's the ongoing work of shaping your inner character. That's the essence of Stoic practice.
Okay, so how do we take this ancient wisdom, these disciplines, and apply them directly to our lives right now? Because the modern world throws some unique challenges at us, doesn't it? I mean, think about online arguments, social media rage, the sheer level of political polarization we see everywhere. People seem perpetually angry online about things that, from a Stoic view, are often external and maybe shouldn't have that power over us.
Absolutely. The online world is almost designed to provoke immediate emotional reactions. But the Stoic principles apply perfectly. Remember Socrates. Interested in hearing others, not just winning? Imagine applying that to a Twitter argument, or applying the discipline of assent. When you read that outrageous comment, pause. Ask, is this truly harming my virtue, or am I just assenting to the idea that these words have power over my peace? It's about refusing to let anonymous comments dictate your inner state.
And the sources mentioned that urge to sort of punish or cancel people for saying the wrong thing. A Stoic might see that impulse as stemming from an over-focus on controlling externals, other people's speech, rather than maintaining internal control.
Right. The Stoic response to an insult isn't necessarily silence, but it would likely be devoid of anger, maybe humor, maybe a calm correction, maybe just moving on. The focus is on your response being virtuous, not on forcing the other person to change through sheer outrage, because outrage often just backfires anyway.
You end up compromising your own tranquility in the attempt to police someone else's words. Marcus Aurelius faced political chaos too, right? And his approach seemed to be about engaging virtuously, but not letting the external turmoil destroy his inner peace. He almost expected people to be difficult.
He famously reminded himself each morning that he would encounter interfering, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unfriendly people. Not out of pessimism, but as a preparation, so he wouldn't be surprised or angered when it happened. He accepted it as part of the human condition, something external he couldn't control, freeing him to focus on his own response.
That's a powerful reframe. Okay, what about another huge modern trigger? Workplace frustrations. We've all had the experience of a difficult boss or that colleague who just drives you nuts.
Yes, the Stoic toolkit is perfect here. Epictetus's dichotomy of control is your best friend. You cannot control your boss's personality or decisions. You just can't. Trying to will make you miserable.
So you waste energy trying to change the unchangeable.
Exactly. But you can control your judgments about their behavior, and you can control your own actions and professionalism.
So shifting the goalposts again. Instead of the goal being, make my boss appreciate me, or make my colleague less annoying, which are external and out of your control.
You internalize the goal. Your goal becomes, do my job with excellence and integrity regardless of my boss's mood. Or maintain my professionalism and calm even when my colleague is being difficult. See the shift? Your success is now measured by your own actions, which you can control.
That takes the power away from the difficult person and puts it back in your hands. Your peace isn't dependent on them behaving well.
Precisely. You become, in a sense, internally invincible to their difficult behavior because your aim is internal virtue, not external compliance from them. It takes practice like everything else, but it's liberating.
Okay, but what about those moments when, despite our best intentions and practice, we do feel that anger starting to bubble up, that heat rising, that red mist starting to form? Is there an emergency brake?
There is, and this is perhaps Seneca's most practical, immediately applicable piece of advice. When you feel anger starting, the single greatest remedy is delay.
Seneca's pause. We mentioned it briefly, but let's really unpack this. What does it look like in action?
It's beautifully simple. You feel the anger, the physical signs, the mental churning, and you deliberately force yourself to pause. Stop. Take a breath. If you can, physically remove yourself from the situation. Walk away for a few minutes. Crucially, this isn't about pretending you're not angry or just bottling it up. It's about creating a space, a gap between the trigger and your reaction. You're hitting the pause button on the automatic anger program.
So the script for yourself and for you listening could literally be, okay, I feel that heat, I feel that urge, I will not make a decision or say anything right now. And then physically step away if possible, even for just a minute or two.
Exactly that. The greatest remedy for anger is delay, Seneca wrote. It sounds almost too simple, doesn't it? But why does it work?
Yeah, what's the mechanism? Why does just pausing help so much?
Because anger thrives on immediacy. It demands an instant, forceful response. It's like a flash fire. Delay starves it of that immediate oxygen. It breaks the chain reaction. That pause, even a short one, allows your rational mind, the slower, more deliberate part of your brain, to catch up with the faster, emotional, reactive part. It gives reason a chance to step in before impulse takes complete control.
It shifts the focus. Instead of being locked onto the external thing that triggered you, the pause forces you to look inward at your own state, your own choice of response. It's an act of reclaiming control.
It's pure mental self-control in action. And in that space you create, that's when you can deploy the other tools.
Right, so the pause isn't just passive waiting, it's the window of opportunity to actively apply the things we've been talking about.
Precisely. In that pause, you can ask, is this anger useful? Is my initial judgment accurate? Discipline of assent. What's the rational thing to do here? Discipline of impulse. Is this reaction aligned with my values? You can analyze the material reality versus your causal interpretation. You get to recalibrate before you speak or act.
So it transforms the moment from a potential disaster into an opportunity for conscious, virtuous action. Or non-action, if that's what reason dictates.
Exactly. It becomes a moment of practice, reinforcing the habit of rational response over emotional reaction. It's not magic, but it's probably the single most effective in-the-moment technique the Stoics offer for anger.
That's incredibly valuable. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's bring this all together. We've gone deep into anger today, from that relatable coffee spill rage to Seneca's profound analysis. For you listening, the absolute core takeaway from the Stoics, the revelation really, is that anger isn't inevitable. It's not just a reflex. It's fundamentally a choice, rooted in the judgments you make about things.
And that space, that tiny gap between the trigger and your reaction, that's where your freedom lives. That's where your power of will resides. You have the capacity to choose how you interpret events, how you respond. You can guard that inner citadel.
It comes down to understanding that the source of anger is internal, your judgment, not external. And then practicing these techniques. Knowing your triggers, separating the event from your judgment, using assent, impulse, and desire wisely and critically, implementing Seneca's pause.
Doing that consistently allows you to move through life, as Epictetus might say, without uneasiness, without fear, without perturbation. It helps you maintain healthier relationships, make better decisions, and ultimately live with greater tranquility because you're no longer being jerked around by every little external annoyance or provocation. You achieve a level of inner freedom.
And that really is the ultimate freedom, isn't it? Not controlling the world outside, which is impossible, but mastering your inner world. Recognizing that while you can't control what happens to you, you always control how you respond, how you frame it, and whether you let it disturb your peace. So the final thought for you to take away and maybe reflect on is this. What specific judgment that tends to trigger your own red mist could you start challenging today? What small shift could begin to change your internal landscape?
And thinking about embracing life's challenges.
Right. Next week, we're shifting gears. We'll go from tackling arguably the most destructive emotion, anger, to embracing one of the most radical, expansive, and maybe ultimately liberating ideas in Stoicism. It's about learning not just to accept everything that happens in your life, but to actively love it. Every single part. Even the difficult parts, the unexpected turns, the things that might right now seem like sources of frustration or pain.
It's called amor fati, the love of fate.
And understanding and practicing it is a total game changer for building that truly unconquerable mind. So join us next time for another deep dive.